Test, test, 1, 2.
I'll begin to dance here.
Greetings from the People's Temple Agricultural Project in Jonestown near Port Kaituma of the Northwest District in Guyana. The music you've been hearing is by the Jonestown Express and one of the several senior choirs. I'm Mike Prokes, and I'm here with Jim Jones, the founder and administrator of the People's Temple Agricultural Project. Jim, I thought you might like to review some of the things that have been happening in Jonestown, including some of the recent prominent visitors we've had here.
Yes, we've had a number of people who have come to our satisfaction and gone through the community with a thorough microscopic eye, because the truth always comes out in the end. We know why we're being persecuted. Let them bay at the moon, the little dogs bay at the moon. They cannot stop this fire. It's alive here. We mean no harm to anyone. We're not going to be involved in any violent activity. We are peace-loving people, but you cannot put out the light of socialism. It's sprung up everywhere, and every day, look at it, children, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And no matter how many corrupt alliances are made, or how many kind of patchworks are made in the systems that don't believe in sharing, it will come tumbling down. Because the truth is that God is love, and love is socialism, and it shall prevail. That cannot be denied. I want to tell you at this hour of 5 o'clock in the morning, I am in good health. This leaves me in the best of mind and spirit. The same power is in this name. So call on it and run into that tower and follow what I told you to do, to go forth and shed your old system. Shake the dust from your feet and march forward, and don't look backward, and run into the ark of safety while you have time, because I know who is that shelter in the time of storm, and you know also.
From Dad and all of us here in the beautiful community he's built for us, hurry home, family. You don't know what you're missing. You just don't know.
Welcome back to Transmissions from Jonestown. This is episode 11, Ockham's Razor, Solving the Mystery of Q875. After 40 years of reflection and debate, researchers and historians are still struggling to piece together what really happened in Jonestown. When a crime is committed, such as a mass murder or the assassination of a congressman, an investigation ensues. People are questioned. Evidence is collected and a forensic analysis of the crime scene conducted. But deep in the jungles of 1970s Guyana, this just wasn't possible. A crime of this size and complexity committed by a radical group of American socialists shocked Guyanese law enforcement and quickly exhausted their resources. The technology and manpower to properly investigate the carnage spread out between 3 remote locations involving over 1,000 people just wasn't available. Diplomatic relations between the United States and Burnham's socialist government was tenuous in 1978, and the FBI was discouraged from meddling with Guyana's affairs. This left the Guyana Defense Force and the State Department to try to unravel a chronological timeline and make sense of the chaos left behind in the immediate aftermath.
Okay, we're just wondering what's going on. There's some troubles up there. I don't know what it is. I'll let you know when I find out. Okay, I suspect the same here from some of the behavior I see. Yeah, you may have some visitors out there at the airport from the group. Pardon me? The group is on the move. Okay, I have no idea what's going on yet, but I'm trying to find out. Right. Okay, be cool. Okay.
Dr. Leslie Mutu, a pathologist, and his team examined the scene nearly 20 hours after the mass tragedy and made their assessments. Prior to this, widespread looting had tainted the scene, Documents and valuables had been removed. Remains may or may not have been tampered with, and tropical rain and darkness obstructed their brief investigation. All of the evidence collected by the Guyanese investigators and the State Department was eventually given to the FBI. But the FBI focused their investigation on the murder of Congressman Leo Ryan and the prosecution of Larry Layton. The real investigation of Jonestown wouldn't begin until researchers and family members gained access to the tapes and documents locked in the FBI's vault. Thanks to the Freedom of Information Act, 971 audio tapes recovered in Jonestown and thousands of documents have been released to the public. I spoke with Mike Carter. He was a radio operator in Jonestown. He survived the mass tragedy when he and his brother carried money and documents out of the settlement on the evening of November 18th. After the mass tragedy, Mike Carter went back to Jonestown to help identify remains. As evidence was being collected, Mike Carter showed investigators tapes in the radio room, indicating that they might be important to their investigation. This is the first link in our chain of evidence in regards to the tapes recovered in Jonestown.
Well, it was our oral history. So they were current active tapes, ones that were being used, were kept on a shelf in the radio room. So I pointed that out. I'm assuming it was a Guyanese Defense Force person that I pointed that out to, that, there's a lot of information here that should be preserved.
The Attention Span Recovery Project would like to thank our special guests, Mike Carter and Fielding McGee, as well as our anonymous contributor. As always, we would like to remind you to do the research and think for yourself. On this episode, we will examine what is perhaps the most perplexing piece of evidence recovered from Jonestown, cataloged as Q875 and known to researchers as the November 19th tape. This approximately 10-minute long recording has inspired and frustrated researchers and helped spawn many a conspiracy theory.
Q875 is an audio cassette tape collected from the Jonestown compound after the November 18th massacre. The State Department collected hundreds of audio tapes that the People's Temple recorded. The audio on them range from Jim Jones sermons, phone conversations, People's Temple music, radio broadcasts, catharsis sessions, espionage, and beyond. What makes Q875 stand out from the other tapes is that the evidence suggests that the tape was recorded in Jonestown roughly 24 hours after the massacre and contains 4 radio broadcasts telling of the airstrip shootings the day before.
In the beginning, all we knew about Q875 was that it was recorded during a window of time that everyone in Jonestown, minus 2 elderly people, are thought to be dead. Theories as to who made the tape and why range from CIA Black Ops agents to Jim Jones himself. An eyewitness who knew Jones and survived Jonestown wrote about the tape years after the mass tragedy, stating that the voices you can hear in the background are those of Jim Jones and his mistress Maria Katsaris. Yet another People's Temple survivor claims he was told by Green Berets that the tape was made accidentally during their secret invasion of the compound. The Jonestown Institute, otherwise known as the Alternative Considerations of Jonestown and the People's Temple, is a website sponsored by the Department of Religious Studies, SDSU. It has become the ultimate depository for People's Temple documents and tapes, as well as a place for the survivors to post their reflections and memoirs. Chief editors of the site, Fielding McGee and his wife Rebecca Moore, created the site as a place to gather information and encourage discussion. They've worked tirelessly over the years, digitizing the documents and tapes to ensure they're available to the public. Fielding McGee wrote an open letter decades ago asking the world to investigate Q875 and help uncover the truth of its origins. There are more than a dozen articles written about the tape, exploring many possibilities as to its origin.
We do have a discussion page on our site about Q875. The tape consists of 4 short radio broadcasts, broadcast news. It's all obviously being recorded off air as the news is being broadcast, and it's only about what has been reported coming out of Jonestown within the last 24 to 48 hours, and it relates to the congressman being shot and rumors of mass death. So it is obviously after November 18th, and it is called the November 19th tape. There are a lot of sounds there are a lot of extraneous sounds that are on the tape, and people have had a hard time identifying them. We did have one sound engineer who analyzed the tape, and he believes that some of the sounds that he is hearing are the sounds of a Coke machine.
Accompanying Congressman Ryan with television and news feed, and some 40 concerned relatives of Americans.
That somebody is like, getting, a Coke out of a Coke machine. And so what he believes is that the recording was made by a GDF soldier or soldiers, that they were in Port Kaituma waiting to go in, and basically all the sounds that you're hearing are that of, a bar. It explains the sound of the screen door being opening and closed.
Within the hour, loud relatives of residents of Jonestown.
Because you didn't have those kinds of things in Jonestown. It explains the sound of the mechanical, like the Coke machine.
Accompanying Congressman Ryan with television and news feed, and some 40 concerned relatives of Americans.
It explains there is some laughter in the background. Which is not something that you would associate with anybody having been in Jonestown on November 19th. And basically, every now and then somebody will come up and say, hey, I have a theory about 875, and I said, I want to hear it, but in the course of discussing your theory, you essentially have to discuss and refute this article that was written by a guy named Joel Thomas for us about 10 years ago, and it's on our website.
The theory that the tape was made in Port Kaituma by the GDF is compelling. Jonestown didn't have a vending machine, nor was there a screen door in the radio room. But how could the tape have ended up with all the other tapes in Jonestown?
And then how it got into Jonestown, there were people that there are all sorts of, there was no central organization of things kind of going in and out of Jonestown. There's absolutely no provenance on any of the tapes. You see pictures of the tapes being loaded in the radio room. That's where most of them came from, but there are also a couple of pictures of just tapes kind of like lying in a heap. So, again, it's one of those things that we do not have the person coming forward to say, I made this tape. But we also, we kind of go with the Occam's razor. The simplest explanation seems to be the best until somebody can come forward with a better explanation. Again, covers all the bases.
Something about this theory didn't seem right. After everything the GDF had to go through just to get to Jonestown, how could that tape travel 7 miles from Port Kaituma to Jonestown and end up with all the other tapes? Shortly after the release of Transmissions from Jonestown, the Attention Span Recovery Project began receiving tips about Q875 from an anonymous contributor. In the beginning, this person would send clipped articles about the aftermath in Jonestown, the whereabouts of People's Temple Archive material, and Jonestown's only a survivor, Hyacinth Thrash. Often the articles would be accompanied by detailed messages about FBI files and tapes. The depth of knowledge and dedication to their research impressed us, though how these articles and cryptic messages all connected at first eluded us. I asked Fielding McGee what happened to all of the evidence after it was collected in Jonestown.
So a lot of it never really went anywhere from, like in Guyana, a lot of it didn't go anywhere. There was a lot of stuff that ended up sitting on the docks, kind of coming in, the stuff that was coming in from customs and the stuff that was from material that was at Lamaha Gardens just was sort of eventually kind of rotted away or was sold. A lot of it was just kind of looted. A lot of the documentation that the Guyana government collected went to a government building which subsequently burned. About 3 or 4 years later, there was a fire of suspicious origin, let's put it that way. There was a fire of suspicious origin. It probably had less to do, if it was in fact arson. There were a lot more secrets that disappeared about the Burnham government than just Jonestown. In fact, there are people who say that was a Jonestown-related fire, but there were so many other things that the Burma government had to hide that, we kind of reject that. Jonestown itself, a lot of the materials, eventually Jonestown sort of disappeared brick by brick, board by board, piece by piece, and so there's nothing there. But there's no effort to kind of, at some point, in other words, it was abandoned. It's not like that there are empty buildings there. It's like there are folks who say that all the wood in Jonestown, all the boards in Jonestown are in Port Kaituma. They're part of other buildings now. And as for San Francisco and Los Angeles, a lot of the stuff, a lot of the papers went to the California Historical Society, and a lot of the tapes, there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tapes, and actually hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents that were burned in a fire. It's known as the Stinson Beach Fire. This happened it was either in December or January of December 78 or January of 79, that former members of the temple just said, some of this stuff just needs to go away. And there was a fire that went all night. Listening to the tapes, I know who a lot of the voices are, and I know what a lot of the context is. It isn't just me. I mean, I've got an incredible amount of help from survivors and from people who've transcribed tapes over the years, including yourself. But when somebody says something, like when Jim Jones says something in the middle of a sermon, and it's a completely unfamiliar name to a lot of the folks who are doing transcribing for us, I know who that person was. I marched in a demonstration for him or against her or whatever it was. So, we've got that kind of institutional knowledge that after we stop, I was just thinking about that this morning. I have no idea who is going to take over the kind of the management of the site. I have a hunch it's just going to be kind of frozen in amber at that moment, But it does give a certain urgency to me and to us to get as much done as we can. Our client at this point is history.
Thousands of people have researched Jonestown and People's Temple, trying to solve the mysteries and debunk conspiracy theories. The people of Jonestown's deaths were never properly investigated. Their tragic tale remains a legend to be expanded on and rewritten by those who take the time to ponder it. The post-mortem examination of evidence, now 40 years old, can only yield so many dusty secrets. About 3 weeks into our correspondence with the anonymous Jonestown researcher, we received this message. I found the smoking gun. I know who made Q875. I'll give you a clue. It wasn't made in Jonestown.
Oh, yes. So don't you count on it. He didn't come after the poor anytime no sky god ever came. It had to be somebody that put on hands. It had to be somebody like Harriet Tubman. It had to be somebody like a Patrick Henry. It had to be somebody that would put their hands. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I'll finish when I get through. Just shift your body a little bit more, and I'll finish when I get through. Because somebody's going to get saved in Philadelphia. Somebody is going to get on the freedom train in Philadelphia.
So how did you discover Q875?
I discovered the November 19th mystery tape on a website called Alternative Considerations of Jonestown and People's Temple years ago. Alternative Considerations of Jonestown and People's Temple website editor, Fieldy McGee, was the first person to give an analysis of Q875. And over the years, others have given their opinions of the tape, including former People's Temple members. Some of the main speculations are that Jim Jones and Maria Katsaris, his mistress, made the tape in the Jonestown radio room while John Victor Stone played nearby. Another theory is that the tape was made by a Guyanese soldier in Port Kaituma and brought to Jonestown. Professional conspiracy theorists would have you believe that the super-secret Black Ops CIA MK Ultra mind control goons recorded the tape after they killed everyone and their cleanup crew merely forgot the tape on the way out of the compound. None of the dozen or so analysis of Q875 made any sense to me after spending many years collecting information and factual evidence of November 18th and 19th in Jonestown. If you've ever seen the death photos that David Hume Kennerly took of the dead bodies around the Jonestown Pavilion in the radio room, it's hard to imagine a group of people and a child milling around making tapes of radio broadcasts. Why would Guyanese soldiers be sitting in a Port Kaituma bar recording broadcasts off the radio and then drop the tape somewhere in Jonestown? Didn't make sense to me at all. Someone recorded Q875 at the People's Temple Georgetown headquarters. They would have had to have taken the tape to Jonestown days after the massacre and deposited it there. This theory to me was the most plausible. Evidence shows that multiple People's Temple members were flown to Jonestown from Georgetown days after the massacre to identify bodies in the compound. The last one, which I'm not going to spend any time fleshing out, is the CIA crew that was running the mind control experiment and were responsible for the tape. We could spend hours going over that. I think my research and evidence will prove that no CIA team made Q875.
Finally, solving the mystery of Q875 could forever change the way we perceive the timeline and historical narrative of what happened in Jonestown. So how did you go about it?
Fielding McGee said in his assessment that for us to prove Q875 that we have to definitively answer these 5 questions. Who made the tape? Where was the tape made? What were people doing as they made the tape? Why did anyone bother to make a tape? Why did they leave the tape behind? After I give my evidence and my assessment, I will be able to definitively answer all 5 of those questions.
The radio broadcasts on Q875 give us a general timeline of when the recording was created. When doing an analysis of the tape, pay attention to the sounds heard in the background.
So the first piece of evidence is the audio that is on the tape, what we can hear. The tape contains 4 news radio broadcasts alerting the public of the ambush upon Leo Ryan's party at the Port Kaituma airstrip.
Medical evacuation aircraft flew out of Temeri Airport this afternoon. 8 wounded people following Saturday afternoon's shooting, but left 5 Americans dead, including Congressman Leo Ryan. A United States Embassy spokesman said the wounded persons will be flown to either Andrews Air Force Base or Howard's Air Force Base in the Panama Canal.
We hear a Guyanese broadcaster giving information that indicates that the report is being made over the airwaves the evening of the 19th. He talks about a medical evac plane that had flown out of Temeri Airport. Evidence shows that that did happen in the afternoon of the 19th. What we hear in the background, we hear a man's voice.
Afternoon, 8 wounded people. Afternoon, 8 wounded people.
We hear chair squeaks.
Closed. Meanwhile, unconfirmed reports reaching closed. Meanwhile, unconfirmed reports reaching.
We hear birds.
As I isolated the sound of birds from the first segment of Q875, I noticed a rhythmic mechanical hum. A noise that, to me, sounds like the hum of an air conditioner.
I encourage listeners to listen to these carefully, and I listen to them over and over and over through headphones, through different mediums, through different sources. Let's take a listen to broadcast number 2.
Today, her last words to her son warned him about the kind of people he might encounter at a religious commune in the remote jungles of Guyana.
The last thing I said to him, be very careful. This is Tuesday morning when he was leaving to go. Be very careful.
Broadcast number 2, we hear an American woman newscaster from ABC News. We also hear Leo Ryan's mother, a short little interview with her. What we hear in the background, we hear a child. We hear a woman's voice. We hear a dog growling. We hear a man say, "Shut up," possibly. We hear a dog growl. We hear a man again say, "Shush." This is what I heard.
No, they are last reported at the airstrip. We believe that they will be transported to Georgetown as soon as possible. Tom Reston says autopsies will be performed on the bodies before they're brought back to the United States. Guyanese troops reportedly have arrived now in Jonestown.
Okay, and then broadcast number 3, let's take a listen to that.
Will be arriving at Timeri within the hour, about relatives of residents of Jonestown. These relatives came into the country last week with...
And once again, we hear a Guyanese newscaster give a report on the airstrip shootings. What do we hear in the background? Birds, screen door slamming. Someone walking into the room and sneezing near the tape recorder.
The intention of visiting the People's Temple settlement along with the late Congressman Leo Ryan. Also leaving on board the same plane is the husband of a senior official of the People's Temple in Georgetown.
And sniffling.
With her 3 children, were found dead at their home in the city last night.
Man speaks at the end.
It is considered the appointment of a secretary at the preliminary meeting held at the public building. It is considered the appointment of a secretary at the preliminary meeting held at the public building.
So let's take a listen to broadcast number 4. Broadcast number 4 appears to have been broadcasted in the late evening of the 19th. It's an American broadcast, and they do a profile on Leo Ryan.
Here's a profile of the late Congressman. A fellow congressman once described Mr. Ryan as part of the new breed on Capitol Hill.
The audio slowly goes into static. What we can hear in the background, we hear machine beeps.
During the last session of Ryan gained prominence.
We hear 2 men speaking initially. One says he's in Georgetown with Richard. An African-American man states he was the executive of the settlement community, right? He's the bigwig. At the end of the segment, we hear a short ham radio broadcast. After I listened to Q875 a bunch of times and took notes on what I heard, I thought it was important to find out how the FBI got the tape. I wanted to know who, when. I found documents in the FBI Reimer file.
Reimer is the FBI code name given to the investigation into the murder of Leo Ryan, totaling 2,750 serials and over 10,000 pages. The Reimer files, like the audio archive, serve as a primary source of information for researchers and scholars. Thanks to the efforts of the Jonestown Institute, these files are available online at the Alternative Consideration site.
The first document that I found was dated December 14, 1978. It is an interview with FBI Special Agent Robert Oglesby Jr. With Richard Martin, who is the Vice Consul of the United States assigned to Caracas, Venezuela, on temporary duty to Georgetown, Guyana. Richard Martin, after the Jonestown Massacre, was sent to Georgetown, Guyana on Thursday, November 23, 1978. He traveled from Georgetown, Guyana to Jonestown, Guyana for the purpose of securing items of interest to the United States government. Martin advised that he gathered tapes, papers, and other items he felt would be of interest, and with the help of several American soldiers, loaded these items into bags and left them at the helicopter pad at Jonestown. Martin further advised that on Friday, November 24, 1978, he secured the help of several American soldiers, and they went from house to house at Jonestown, gathering additional tapes, papers, and personal identifications. Martin advised that all of the items that he had gathered on Thursday, together with those found on Friday, were then transported via United States Army helicopter to Georgetown, Guyana. Martin stated, with the exception of 2 small packets of papers and 1 reel of tape, all the items were placed in a room in the United States consulate. This room was locked and all the items are in the custody of Doug Ellis, Consul of the United States of America. The 2 small packets of papers which Martin did not place in this room were turned over to Ambassador John Burke. In this document, it's a memorandum for the record. I, Richard Martin, a Vice Consul of the United States of America, was temporarily assigned to the U.S. Embassy, Guyana, on November 19, 1978. I was assigned responsibility for the preservation and protection of the personal estates of the deceased American citizens and for the identification of the American citizens survivors there. In this capacity, I visited Jonestown, Guyana on the 23rd of November, 1978, and again on November the 24th, 1978. Vandalism and pilferage had been so extensive when I initially arrived to Jonestown that identification of individual personal effects was impossible. Residential buildings were only marked by numbers. I collected various items which in my judgment were the property of deceased U.S. citizens and transported them to the U.S. consulate at Georgetown. These follows a brief description of the types of property collected and the locations where found. Passports, 64 in the office. Treasury checks found in the office. Costume jewelry, letters, photographs, files found in various offices and houses. Memos and note, maps and diagrams, communications equipment, recording tapes. All of the above was in my custody from the time of my departure from Jonestown, November 24, 1978, to the time of my arrival at the Georgetown consulate, where I turned over everything to Consul Douglas V. Ellis, Jr.
So all of the evidence recovered in Jonestown was taken to the American consulate in Georgetown by the State Department.
So we see that the tape Q875 goes from Jonestown to the United States Embassy offices in Georgetown under the care of Consul Doug Ellis. I also found this document in the Reimer files, dated December 4th, 1978, Georgetown, Guyana. I, Richard Martin, Vice Consul of the United States of America, was temporarily assigned to the United States Embassy at Guyana on the 19th of November, 1978. Among other items of property which I collected at Jonestown on November 24th, 1978, was a tape recording. This recording was of the reel-to-reel type and was found on a tape recorder situated on a raised platform at the end of an open-air building known as the Pavilion.
How very much I've loved you. How very much I've tried my best to give you the good life. But in spite of all of that I've tried, a handful of our people with their lies have made our life impossible. There's no way to detach ourselves from what's happened today.
The recorder was situated on a table of a platform and was not running when I first observed it. Approximately 1/4 of the tape was on the take-up, and the other 3/4 was on the rewind reel. The recorder was located less than 2 feet from a chair on the platform. I removed both reels from the recorder and placed them in a bag which I was carrying. On November 24th, 1978, when I had completed my duties in Jonestown, I returned to Georgetown. The tape was in my custody from the time I departed until I transferred it to John Burke, United States Ambassador to Guyana, on the evening of November 24th, 1978. The tape was played at the time and then locked in the ambassador's safe. December 4th, 1978, at approximately 10 a.m., the tape was removed from the ambassador's safe. I was able to identify it as the tape which I had removed from the pavilion, both by the appearance of the reels and by the contents of the tape when it was played. At that time, the tape was transferred to the custody of Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI agent, redacted.
As many of you may have surmised, The reel-to-reel tape taken out of the safe and given to the FBI was the death tape. Now the FBI's involvement with the evidence collected in Jonestown begins.
Going through more of the Reimer files, I found another document dated December 14th, 1978, Georgetown, Guyana. From December 4th, 1978 through December 12th, 1978, Special Agents Redacted and Special Agent Robert J. Oglesby Jr. and Redacted reviewed material contained in 26 wooden boxes, various cardboard boxes, suitcases, footlockers, and plastic bags. All of the above material and containers were in a locked room located in the United States Consulate in Georgetown, Guyana. These items were in the custody of Doug Ellis, Consul of the United States of America. After reviewing all of the above material, 11 wooden boxes approximately 2 feet by 2 feet by 3 feet were set aside for the purpose of transporting material, which was the interest of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. These boxes contained records relating to the following activities of the People's Temple and People's Temple members: financial and property records, activities in the United States of America, contacts with Guyana citizens, lists of People's Temple members, possible bondage restrictions of members including children, foreign contracts, FBI records, weapons, codes, miscellaneous court cases, miscellaneous sampling of People's Temple activities. In addition to the above 4 of these 11 boxes contained videotapes, audio tapes, Super 8 and 16 millimeter prints. Below is a listing of all video and audio recordings located by the above agents. 417 7-inch reel audio recordings, 247 cassette audio recordings, 8 5-inch reel audio recordings, 14 microcassette audio recordings, 1 2-inch reel audio recording, 2 8-track cartridges audio recordings, 44 video cassettes, 19 Super 8 movie reels, 4 Super 8 sound cartridges, 1 10-inch Super 8 reel, 2 16-millimeter print reels, and 1 plastic bag of miscellaneous audio tapes. Okay, the next files that I found several handwritten classifications of all the audio tapes. The FBI agents, when they listen to these tapes, they give each tape a number, assign it a number, and then they also give a description of the tape. For instance, Q867 is a 90-minute Memorex tape. Q868 is a 1-track 60-minute tape. Q875, the mystery tape in question, is a Sanyo C12. So when we do a little investigating into the Sanyo C12, the 12 is a 12 means 12 minutes. This particular tape was specifically made for telephone answering machines. After the FBI in Georgetown, along with the State Department officials that were listening to the tapes and categorizing the tapes, after they did that, we find this document where we see the movement of the tapes from the United States Embassy in Georgetown. December 28, 1978, 7 cases of documents shipped from Georgetown to San Francisco, and 4 cases of tapes shipped from Georgetown to Washington, D.C. January 19, 1979, 15 cases of documents shipped from Georgetown to San Francisco. January 30th, 1979, 7 cases of tapes shipped from Georgetown to Washington, D.C. Also, we have a document where there's a signature of receiving of the tapes. They were received by the FBI as into evidence on January 31st, 1979, we can see in this document, to San Francisco. So that's where the tapes go, to San Francisco. From Jonestown to Georgetown, from Georgetown to San Francisco into the hands of the FBI. When they go to San Francisco, that's the first time the FBI takes them into evidence. As far as the documentation of Q875 in the Reimer files, that's it. That's all the documentation we have of it. The FBI did not give any assessment to Q875. That's where it stalls.
After the FBI completed their investigation into the deaths at the Port Kaituma airstrip, the tapes sat in a vault, mostly unlistened to. It wasn't until the public began filing FOIA requests for the tapes that their contents were scrutinized.
So what have we learned about the information in these FBI documents? Well, we know that there was a gentleman named Richard Martin who went to Jonestown, collected the tapes, took them back to Georgetown to the United States Embassy, and left them in the care of Doug Ellis. And from there, after being listened to by FBI agents and State Department employees, they go into the hands of the FBI. And that's where the story sat for years.
Every few years, new tapes and documents are released by the FBI thanks to the public making FOIA requests. Somewhat recently, 2 tapes were released of particular interest to the researching community.
The next document that I found in the FBI files was of particular interest. April 27th, 1979, and this is from San Francisco FBI Office 2, Director of the FBI Priority. During an interview with U.S. Consul Douglas V. Ellis, Georgetown, Guyana, he revealed existence of a tape recording made by him on November 18, 1978. Recordings include incoming and outgoing telephone calls from residents of Mr. Ellis. Tapes also contain audible radio transmissions in the background. At the time of the interview, Ellis furnished Xerox copies of handwritten notes that he made the weekend of April 21st and 22nd, 1979. These notes reflect time sequence and subject of each phone call. The 2 tapes were given to the FBI and categorized as Q1289 and Q1290. So these 2 tapes Doug Ellis made in his home the day of November 18, 1978. This is the day of the massacre.
What we hear on Q1289 is Sharon Amos, a temple member at the People's Temple headquarters in Georgetown, having a 3-way conversation. On one end is Doug Ellis, who is recording the phone call. You can hear his wife May Chen and their young daughter occasionally. And on the other end is Mike Carter in the radio room in Jonestown. Sharon is trying to track down one of Leo Ryan's aides, Jim Scolart. Richard Dwyer, who accompanied Leo Ryan to Jonestown, is trying to reach Jim Scolart regarding the extra planes needed to transport defectors now trying to escape Jonestown. Sharon Amos sounds calm considering in just a few hours she would murder her 3 children. Doug Ellis attempts to track down Jim Scolart and ensure the congressman's flight will leave on time, totally unaware of what is about to happen on the airstrip in Port Kaituma.
Hello? Hello? Oh, hello, excuse me. Sharon? All right, this is Mrs. Addison. My husband's going to speak to you. Hello?
Hello, Sharon?
Yes?
Yeah, this is Doug.
Yes.
The embassy just called me, said you wanted to talk to me.
Do you know where Jim Scolart is? He wanted to come and talk to Dick Dwyer on the radio. I don't know if it's too late or not. I've been trying to get him all morning.
Last I knew he was at the embassy. That was an hour ago. He wanted to talk to Dick Dwyer on the radio? Okay, well, what do you want me to try to find him and tell him to go over to the house?
Well, it depends if he comes right. See, it's getting close to the time when they're going to be leaving, so let me check. Hold on. Is it too late for Jim Scolart to talk to Dick Dwyer? I think it's going to get too late by the time he's already going to have to, they probably do it because they're going to leave in 20 minutes. I guess you can talk to him when he comes into the airport. Okay, thanks, Mike. Okay, right. Okay, I think it's going to be too late. I've been trying to reach him all morning. Would you tell him that because...
Sure, and you haven't heard anything yet about it? Excuse me, I'm going to stick.
About what?
Hold on a minute.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Got a
sneeze. Yeah, I got a terrible cold. You haven't heard anything yet about any delays. We can still count on them leaving at 2 o'clock.
We've got it all set to leave, too. I mean, they're leaving in 20 minutes, which gives them over an hour.
Right. Okay, great. Alrighty, I'll tell Jim that you're looking for him. Oh, okay. Good afternoon, United States Sims. Yeah, boss, Doug Ellis. Is, James Scholart there? He's the, staffer on the congressman's, trip. No, he's not, Mr. Ellis. Okay, good. Thanks a lot. Can you put me up to the ambassador's office? Okay. Sir, this is Doug Ellis. Oh, Doug, yeah, I was on the other line with Peter Landano. Oh, okay. The People's Temple just called me, and they wanted to find Mr. Scholart because he apparently wanted to talk to Dick Dwyer. People's Temple wanted Mr. Scholart to know that they probably weren't going to be able to put him through to Dick because the group is rounding itself up now and getting ready to go down to the airstrip in another hour. Oh, it sounds like well, I guess it'll take a while. So maybe the 2 o'clock departure time is going to hold, huh? Yes, they have no information to indicate that it won't. Okay. Okay, good. Well, if I hear of any snags, I'll of course let you know. Okay. See you later, sir. Right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Hello? Yes, is this me, Jen?
Yes, Jen.
Hi.
How are you? I recognize your voice now.
We've been talking to each other a lot, huh?
That's right. I'm sure you want to talk to Doug. Hold on one minute.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
It's to our credit that my wife hasn't started getting suspicious yet about all these phone calls.
Oh, I hope not.
How you doing?
Okay, well, the reason I'm calling is they want to talk to you or Jim Scholart on the... Dick Dwyer said he has to talk to you or Jim Scholart before he leaves. And I can't get a hold of Dick Scholart. No, he's not at the embassy. He's not at the hotel.
Wait a minute, my daughter's on the extension.
Excuse me.
Yeah, please hang up. That was my 3-year-old girl.
I see her sometime.
I'm looking forward to seeing yours sometime, too.
You've got official business in mind, I do.
Anyway, well, can you phone patch me to Dick, or... Dick had a message for me. They're bringing out 6 people in addition to their 18. That means they need another plane, and he wants me at the airport to meet. So it sounds like they're bringing somebody out.
At the beginning of Q875, Doug Ellis is starting to get the feeling that something has gone very wrong in Jonestown. Leo Ryan's plane never left the airstrip, and he is picking up strange radio transmissions from Jonestown.
Sure, a very strange message, seemingly some sort of encryption. Hold on a second. 3 people were asked to receive this and no one else. And when they were assembled, it was, a lot of people have seen... Pardon? A lot of people have seen Mr. Fraser. I think Mrs. Brownfield has offered to help. A lot of people have seen Mr. Fraser. I think Mrs. Excuse me, sir. Mrs. Gilliam they're talking about. Just a second. So as long as there seems to be more to this, maybe I better call you in another minute or two, if you don't mind.
Hello?
Hello, is Doug there?
Yes, just a minute, sir.
Thank you. Hello, Doug? Yes. Latest information is that they still are on the ground up there. Okay, good. Thanks a lot. Try to keep me posted. There may be trouble up there. Talk to you later. There may be some sort of problem up there. A lot of people have seen Mr. Fraser. Yeah. I think Mrs. Brownfield has offered to help. She's 3, or perhaps it was free. Get SB to help. And get all the other folks. And then there was something about, hey, I've got an idea, how about Mrs. Gillian? And they said, yeah, get her too. It's some obvious sort of code, and it sounds very, very strange. Just when these people were standing by to receive this message, they were told to clear the radio room and only have certain personnel there. They called up and said, yeah, we heard GDF at Ogle have heard something about a problem at Port Kaituma. So maybe something going on up there. SB could be a special branch. Mrs. Gillian could be GDF. I don't know. But it's an obvious encryption. I'm not reading something into it because they've been talking in the clear all day. Yeah. This means something.
According to the People's Temple Radio Codebook, Mr. Fraser is the code word for death. A lot of people have seen Mr. Fraser meant that people in Jonestown were already dying when this message was intercepted by the embassy. According to the same codebook, Mrs. Brownfield is code for do whatever you can to even the score. The reference to SB could have been referring to Sandra Bradshaw. She was in charge of the San Francisco People's Temple.
Hi, is that you?
Yes, who's calling, please?
Sure.
All right. Joe, he can't talk right now. He's busy on something. He want me to take a message here. What hear from you?
All right. I just found out that the reason that the planes haven't taken off was because it was reported that there's been some kind of a shooting.
Oh, no.
Huh?
You sure?
I'm just telling you what I heard.
Clearly, the State Department was scrambling to understand what was happening on November 18, 1978, in both Port Kaituma and in Jonestown. Over 900 American lives were coming to an end, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Not at this point, anyway. Doug Ellis scanned the radio, hoping to pick up something from one of the People's Temple radio rooms, but there was nothing but dead air. The mystery tape, Q875, was listed in the FBI files as being the only Sanyo C12 tape found in Jonestown. The Doug Ellis tapes, Q1290 and Q1289, were added to the FBI's collection later and were not originally cataloged.
After finding these documents, I made a FOIA request for the physical descriptions of Q1289 and Q1290, and they are identical to Q875. Both are 12-minute Sanyo C12 answering machine cassette tapes.
When performing an audio analysis of 40-year-old copies of magnetic tape recordings, the muffled voices and noise artifacts can be difficult to discern. Theories as to what is actually going on in the background of these recordings are numerous. I encourage you to form your own opinions as to what can be heard on these tapes.
But what is of interest, is important to note about this tape, is Doug Ellis sneezing and sniffling into the phone and tells Sharon Amos that he has a terrible cold.
Sure. And you haven't heard anything yet about it? Excuse me, Miss Stitch.
About what?
Hold on a minute. Excuse me. I had a sneeze. Yeah, I got a terrible cold.
Someone can be heard sneezing and sniffling in the background of the mystery tape, although to my ears, it sounds like a woman.
Leo Ryan. Also leaving on board the same plane is the husband of a senior.
Also, things in the background that are significant at the end of the first call, Doug Ellis's 3-year-old daughter, is you can hear her in the background. You can hear ham radio transmissions.
They're working on it. They're on their way to see Mr. Fraser.
I will now play a clip of radio noise heard in the background of the Doug Ellis tapes. And now a clip of the radio noise heard in the background of the mystery tape Q875. In both recordings, you can also hear a door slam.
The congressman and 4 other Americans died while boarding a plane.
Also FOIA requested is the photographs from the FBI of the FBI agents and the embassy officials listening to the tapes, Doug Ellis along with Agent Oglesby.
In these photographs, you can see many different types of tapes and cassette players strewn about the room. Stacks of tapes, some with handwritten notes attached to them, sit next to Doug Ellis and Oglesby as they listen to the recordings, with intense expressions on their faces. The enormous task of digging through mountains of Jonestown found audio footage is illustrated, as well as the disorganized methods of the investigation.
Who made the tape? I believe that Doug Ellis made Q875.
Could Doug Ellis have recorded Q875 and somehow the tape ended up in the hands of the FBI mixed in with all the others? Our anonymous contributor attempts to solve the mystery by answering the 5 questions posed by Fielding McGee.
So who made the tape? I believe that Doug Ellis, U.S. Consul to the United States, made that tape in his home in Georgetown, Guyana. Because we know that he made these 2 other tapes the day before. We know that he was monitoring ham radio transmissions coming between Georgetown and Jonestown. So we know that he was definitely making tapes. Why did anyone bother to make a tape? Why do I think Doug Ellis made the tape? I think that there was so little information, people were trying to get information wherever they could. Same goes for the people in the household of Doug Ellis. Now we know from Doug Ellis's 2 other phone call recording tapes that his wife was obviously there, hands-on, helping him as this whole thing unfolded.
Good morning, American Embassy. Yes, hello. This is Mrs. Alice speaking. He's a moment for me? Yes, of course, my dear. Hold just a moment. Thank you very much.
Hello, hon.
Hi, honey. Is there anything I can do?
No, sweetheart. Everything's fine.
So it's not unlikely that she was hitting record and listening to radio transmissions in the home, gleaning for information. So that's why I think they made the tape. And where was the tape made? Obviously, it was in the Ellis household. What were people doing as they made the tape? You can hear people on Q875 shuffling, moving about, having calm conversations. You hear a child. You hear the mother. People also hear a dog growling, and you can hear Doug Ellis multiple times shushing the dog.
As reported at the airstrip, we believe that they will be transported to Georgetown as soon as possible.
Tom Reston says autopsies will be performed on the bodies before they're brought back to the United States. Guyanese troops reportedly have arrived now in Jonestown.
On one of Doug Ellis's tapes that he recorded on the 18th, you can hear the child scold the dog.
This morning when Mr. Ambassador came in, he came by himself, and Mr. Angel was here, but he was by himself. Well, Mr. Scarlett was there, because he called me from the embassy. I see. Well, no, I haven't seen him. Hold on, I'm going to ask Mr. Weaver if he knows.
I believe that the African-American gentleman that you hear on Q875 in segment 4 as it fades off into static, if you listen and you listen and you listen and you listen closely, you can hear him conversing with someone else. You can pick up bits of his conversation. Richard Martin, I have multiple photographs of Richard Martin from the U.S. Embassy, and he is indeed an African-American gentleman. Why did they leave the tape behind in Jonestown? The FBI misidentified this tape as being found in Jonestown when indeed it wasn't. But they didn't know that when they got the tapes in San Francisco. They just took it on word that all the tapes came straight out of Jonestown. How did this tape get mixed in with all the other Jonestown tapes? I believe because of these photographs I have of the FBI agents and Doug Ellis and other State Department officials listening to the tape, I believe that Doug Ellis probably brought his cassette recorder from his house to the embassy, because we see various different tape recording machines in the shot. I believe he brought it from his house, which still had Q875 in the deck, and somehow it got mixed in and shuffled in with all the other tapes and shipped off to the FBI. So therefore it was mislabeled as found in Jonestown. It wasn't made in Jonestown.
Is Doug Ellis even aware of the Q875 mystery tape?
So through third-party email, I was able to get in touch with Doug Ellis and laid him out this whole thing about this mysterious tape, which he had no idea even existed. More or less, he did nod to, more than likely, the scenario is that he did create that tape and it did accidentally get into the FBI tapes. So that's where it's at. That's it. No more mystery tape. To think that Jim Jones made this tape 24 hours after he had murdered everyone with a few assorted temple members gathered around the radio room. I mean, if you actually look at those photographs, I don't think anybody was going to stick around to do that. I doubt that elderly Hyacinth Thrash and Grover Davis would have gone into that radio room and made those tapes. It just doesn't seem likely. I think the one speculation that this really knocks down, which I enjoy knocking down, is the CIA mind control goon squad that was there that killed everybody and accidentally left the tape behind. But we know somebody had the motivation and the means to make Q875 and why it was made.
This compelling theory may solve the mystery for some of you. There is no overstating the amount of research it took to connect all the dots and trace the evidence thousands of miles. An ocean of time and disorganized FBI files made getting here a difficult journey. If nothing else, this possible conclusion to one of Jonestown's greatest mysteries may be an indication that thanks to the passage of time and the patient gathering of documents and tapes, we may be able to learn more about what really happened in Jonestown now than anyone could have in 1978. On the next season of Transmissions from Jonestown,
I ran until I collapsed. And I collapsed on the ground. I could hear people walking all around me. I didn't know who they were, but I just called out for help. And they just leaned over me and said, what's the secret? What's the secret? What is the secret that you know that they want to kill you?
If the authorities would have did a better job investigating my mom's death, at least, and I feel she was the first to die at the hands of Jim Jones. And if they would have done a proper investigation then, he would have been stopped in California.
They were asking questions, and I was told not to say anything, not to discuss anything with anybody. Then once we got to New York, we were taken to a big hangar. They took us, they examined us, made sure we were okay, and then they started questioning us individually.
Fear is a really strange beast. It will cause you to do things that you think are right in the moment and can be really, really wrong.
I remember one time Jim had these little gel capsules that squirted blood, and Jim would hold a gel capsule and he squeezed it with one little finger there, acting like he's, stopping the bleeding with that finger over the holes that appeared in his hand. Of course, the real story of Jesus turns out that they put the nails in the wrist.
The Attention Span Recovery Project would like to thank the Jonestown Institute, as well as our special guests, Fielding McGee and Mike Carter. We would also like to give a special thanks to this episode's anonymous contributor. If you have any questions or comments about this program, contact us at radiojonestown@gmail.com.
End transmission.
It moves when I talk.
It's not doing nothing now.
When I...
What the hell's wrong with this thing?
Wait a minute.
Well, it's
moving and everything, huh?
Yeah. It didn't move on.
Well, when I use the, the phone thing, it works. It goes tick, tick, tick.
When I start praising his machine, all of a sudden it goes, it's messed up.